Hey guys, Mitch Stokes here from Fluid Fitness, and I'm here with your fitness tip of the week. And today I want to talk about weightlifting belts. When should you use them? Who should be using them? At what times are appropriate? It's a great tool for those that have experience lifting for a long period of time, but for the vast majority of you, you really don't need it, and it actually becomes a crutch. A lot of times people tell me once they start lifting weights, they take squats, deadlifts, things like that, they want a belt on because it makes them feel safer. If you're moving poorly, a belt is not going to do anything for you. You need to learn to brace your body, use the belt that's built into your body to begin with, your core, your natural weightlifting belt, engaging that, breathing in your diaphragm, creating abdominal pressure, stabilizing your spine, activating all those muscles is better for you long term. Once you're down the road, you have a little bit more experience, say 2-3 years of strength training where you're pushing your weights beltless. Then you could talk about maybe adding a belt, like maybe say you want to compete in powerlifting. That's fine. A vast majority of my lifters and a vast majority of my athletes, I have trained beltless, especially youth into high school age. They really just don't need it. They're not lifting heavy enough really to warrant it. And second, they need to develop that musculature in their body so that they're moving correctly and less worried about putting a ton of weight on their body, building sound movement, learning how to activate their core so that when they do eventually go to a belt, they get the most benefit out of it. And they're not just pulling on a heavy weight with a rounded back and just throwing a belt on there thinking that's going to help them, it's going to save them. You can still injure yourself with a belt on if you're moving poorly. Okay, so roughly you want 2 to 3 years experience first, really pushing your weights. And even at that point, if you have an experienced lifter, they can benefit greatly from training beltless. A lot of times in programs, you'll see beltless deadlifts, beltless squats for a heavy set of 5, a heavy triple without a belt. And then later on in the week or after that, toward the tail end of that session, then they're told to put a belt on and push their heavy double or their heavy single afterward. That's the times that it's appropriate. Really, if you're training with a belt all the time, even if you are an experienced lifter, you're missing out. You could be gaining that much more raw strength and developing your body by training beltless more frequently, especially early on in a block of training, far out, 6 months to 3 months out from a meet. Take a break from the belt. If you've been wearing a belt for all your movements all the time, take a break from it. Even if you have old back injuries, you're going to find that you benefit greatly from strengthening that core up. Do more low back exercises, do some Romanian deadlifts, back extensions, reverse hyper if you have access to one, rather than always going to that training wheel, the belt. Now, picking a belt out, there's different products out there. Neoprene's fine. It's more comfortable for a lot of people. For me personally, I find that leather works better, okay? It's more rigid, it's stiffer. It may not be as comfortable off the bat. A lot of people don't like the leather belt when they first put it on. It needs to be broken in a bit. I have a leather belt that I've been using on and off for the last 5 years. It still works great. Fits me well. It's like a baseball glove. It's nice and broken in. So maybe not throw that out right away. When you get a leather belt and you don't like it, spend some time with it. But again, 2 to 3 years at a minimum. Spend some time training beltless, develop your movement patterns, and then when it's time, like say at a weightlifting meet or a powerlifting meet, or you're hitting a 1 rep max, then it might be time to think about putting a belt on. But again, you also want experience training with the belt, learning how to pressurize correctly into it. And that's going to look like the correct way to wear the belt. You want it around your midriff, around your diaphragm and abs, not necessarily down at your low back. Okay, and I've also seen people have them really high. That might work for some people, but for the vast majority of you, you want it across your mid-back, your low back, across your abdomen. You want it nice and snug. You should barely be able to get a finger in there, if at all, so that when you breathe in, you're creating pressure through the diaphragm, breathe into your belly, and you squeeze into that belt. That belt should feel like it's going to pop off of you. That's how much pressure you're creating. It's like a pair of balloons around your spine. That's what stabilizes you and keeps you from injuring your spine when you're under heavy loads. Back extensions. It makes no sense to me to wear a belt for a back extension. You're supposed to be getting training volume on your low back, so putting an 8 on your low back kind of defeats the purpose. Me personally, Romanian deadlifts, I don't use them for Romanian deadlifts. I really don't even like it using belts for the deadlift, say for maybe a 1RM. When I'm doing repetition work, sets of 5, sets of 10, sets of 8, even heavy triple, go beltless. You're trying to build your low back. The whole purpose of a deadlift is to build your posterior chain. And if you're always using some kind of aid, some kind of gear on your posterior chain, you're not getting the full benefit of the exercise. So stay away from belts, guys. You really don't need them unless you're competing. And even at that point, throughout most of your training, you do better with training beltless. That's all I have for you this week. I'll see you next week.